Hi, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 28th Sunday Assembly in San Diego. We're glad you could all join us for this celebration of the one life that we know we have. And before we get started, I would like to point out that we are filming today, as we always do. If you don't wish to be photographed or videotaped, we have our media-free zone over here, and you can go take a seat over there. Also, we do have childcare available out on the back patio with our licensed, professional, capable, competent childcare folks. If you would like to do that, kids are welcome to stay. There's nothing that they can't stay for, but if you'd like to, there's a spot. So, let's jump right in. First thing we're going to do is we're going to have a song. We've got our Sunday Assembly song, written by the inimitable Paul Svensson. Why don't you teach it to us?
Good morning now. Now I'll say good morning. Let's all stand up. Mind? You don't have to if you don't want to. Seriously, if you'd rather sit, please sit. Okay, so this song is very, very easy to do. Let me sing the first verse, and if you know it, sing along with me, and then I'll teach you what you do. Oh, welcome to Sunday Assembly. We look round the room and must say, to familiar old faces and new ones, we're glad that you came here today. Here's the chorus. We're glad that you came here today. Hey, we're glad that you came here today. To familiar old faces and new ones, we're glad that you came here today. Go back one. Let's do it again now. Ready? You see how that chorus goes? So every verse will be the same, and then you'll sing that little repeated thing together. And this is also in 6/8 time, so it means that you should move a little. Jeez, I've never seen such a bunch of people standing straight. Come on now. It helps you digest your breakfast. Oh, welcome to Sunday Assembly. I look round the room and must say, to familiar old faces and new ones, we're glad that you came here today. Here we go. We're glad that you came here today. Hey, we're glad that you came here today. To familiar old faces and new ones, we're glad that you came here today. And when our assembly is over, we hope that you don't have to run. We'd really like to get to know ya, so stick around after we're done. Raise your voices. Stick around after we're done. Oh, stick around after we're done. We'd really like to get to know ya, so stick around after we're done. We like to sing songs when we gather, so rock, pop, and ballads we croon. We raise up our voices in verses, and sometimes we sing them in tune. Come on now. And sometimes we sing them in tune. Sometimes we sing them in tune. We raise up our voices in verses, and sometimes we sing them in tune. When we're all done with the program, and after we sing the last song, introduce yourselves to one another. You won't be a stranger for long. No, you won't. You won't be a stranger for long. You won't be a stranger for long. Introduce yourselves to one another, and you won't be a stranger for long. So welcome to Sunday Assembly. We greet you with wide open doors. We're certainly glad that you joined us to live better, help often, wonder more. Live better, help often, wonder more. Live better, help often, wonder more. We're certainly glad that you joined us to live better, help often, wonder more. Job this morning.
Thanks, Paul. That was fantastic. Get out there, you. So, welcome to Sunday Assembly. We are a radically inclusive secular community. As you can tell from our song, our motto here is to live better, help often, wonder more. How many people here, by show of hands, this is their first time coming to Sunday Assembly? Keep them up. Everybody, give them a high five. Thank you so much for coming. So we like to get together every month and learn a little something about science maybe, sing a few silly songs, share a little bit about our lives, and of course, have some snacks, always a very important part. But mostly we just like to get together and have a good time, so thank you all for coming. One of the things that we do every month is to talk about life happens. What are the things that are happening in your life? If you have something that you'd like to share with the group, we have a little box out in front on your way in. You can write it on a 3x5 card and tell us what's going on with you. So we have just a couple things for today. First, we have Josh. Where's he? 12 years old, young guy. Where's he at? Jonah. I'm sorry. I'm not reading it right. Jonah. Getting to do 9th grade math in the 8th grade. Obviously very smart. That's fantastic. And we all love math, so good on you. Go do it. And then Kristen and Edward found a new cute little house, and they're downsizing, so their announcement is if anybody would like some free kitchenware, including a great Breville juicer, find Kristen and Edward back here after on our announcements, after our, yeah, right there. Yeah? Thanks. Oh, one more. Xavier, our youngest child, going to be 10 years old tomorrow. Happy birthday to Xavier. Where's he? Right there. Woo! Happy birthday. Thanks. You can use the other one. There you go.
All right, we are co-emceeing today, so we're going to be switching off a little bit. I would like at this point to introduce the reading. We have a reading every Sunday Assembly, usually that goes with whatever our theme is going to be. Our theme, as you saw in the program, is O Brother, Who Art Thou? And talking about who we are. Our reading today is called Love, Life, and the Human Condition, an essay in art. It is a photo essay by Kimberly Lauren Bryant and will be read by Jimmy Castaneda.
As human beings, we are definitely mysterious creatures. What makes us tick, our hopes and desires, our fears and secret plans, is what bonds us together. Artists through the ages have used the human condition as fodder for their work, exploring humanity's quirks and quandaries through paint, sculptures, and more. From our need to be loved and touched to our yearning for transcendence, from pondering the meaning of life to dealing with grief and loss, we're all moving through the same experiences in our unique ways. Most of us seek joy, beauty, and truth in our lives. Even if we don't experience them every day, they're ideals we strive toward. We spend time meditating on the meaning of life, philosophizing about the whys and hows of it all. As we contemplate our existence, questions of perception and reality arise. We're inspired to travel outside our comfort zones and wander in search of ourselves for a sense of identity. We explore individualism, looking deeper into ourselves to see what lies beneath the surface. We discover not only our inimitable uniqueness, but our likeness to everyone else. Experiencing release and connection with music and other arts provides a transcendental space in which our feelings, both foreign and familiar, can dance freely. If we're lucky, we fall in love. Expressing desire, love, and intimacy with another opens our hearts to another dimension. And yet, we can never really know our partners fully. So much of love remains a mystery. As we inevitably experience grief, trauma, and loss, we begin to understand life more deeply. To love is also to lose. While solace and isolation prove challenging to endure, they increase our qualities of introspection and empathy. It's no secret that we're all going to die. Instead of fearing our impermanence, why not see it as freedom? And so we embrace the dance of life in all of its messy, unadulterated joys and pains. We love and live and laugh and cry through our shared experiences of the human condition.
All right, great job. Thank you, Jimmy. That's awesome. I would now like to introduce today's speaker, Pascal Gagneux. He is a Swiss-American biologist trained in evolutionary biology, field primatology, and molecular biology. He's an associate professor of pathology at UCSD and associate director for CARTA, the Center for Academic Research and Training in Anthropogeny, a center dedicated to exploring and explaining the human phenomenon. His scientific journey has taken him from behavioral studies of wild chimpanzees in West Africa to non-invasive genetic studies of wild chimpanzees to the comparative study of cell surface sugars, glycobiology, in humans and other apes. And he's here to talk to us today. His talk is called The Paradoxical Ape. So welcome, Pascal.
Thanks very much, Leah. Am I okay with one microphone? So yes. I'll put this away. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I will try to address a question that has fascinated me ever since I was lucky enough to spend a couple of years living with chimpanzees in West Africa. And the question is that these closely related apes, we all know they are the closest living relatives, strike you by being almost like you, and the next second, they don't do something you expect them to do. So for the last 30 years, I've been wondering, how can they be so similar to us, and how can they be so radically different? Thanks to a daily portion of National Geographic's and Discovery Channel, many of you must be familiar with all the amazing things that bonobos and common chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans do. So there is one school of thought that argues that, yes, they're genetically very similar to us, we're just another ape. There is nothing to explain. We have been underappreciating these other species, always being the human exceptionalist and saying we must be better than them. But I think there is something to explain. The fact that we all sit here and use language and time travel together, I'm going to take you on a mental travel both in time and space, is something that there is no evidence that apes can sit together and tell each other stories because they do not have language. They communicate using sounds, quite stereotypical, but they cannot create a story, invent names. In fact, they have no names. They don't use names. There is no way for one chimpanzee to get together with the other chimpanzee and say, you know, that Frodo guy is such a bastard. Tomorrow morning we get up early and we nail him. Humans do that quite a bit. So if we look, we take one of the things we do, some of us, is create satellites and take images of the world. This is a picture of the globe at night, and it shows you where the really rich primates live. That's where you have a lot of light. There's a lot of other human primates in darker places, but they have less money and less power, so they can't light up the sky. What's very striking is our closest living relatives, the common chimpanzees and the bonobos, live only in the forests of Africa, and the only living African great apes are the two species of orangutans, the Sumatran orangutans and the Bornean orangutans. Look how restricted they are. They don't live anywhere near a place without tropical forests, and that's partly due to the fact that great apes build a new nest every night, mostly as protection from predation by things like leopards or hyenas or lions. And so one big question is, how come we are the only species of primate that took over the entire planet? Wherever we went, we killed pretty much anything closely related to us. And I'm very sad to report that you probably all know we are in the process of making these species extinguish. You might be the last generation of humans living at the same time as these species. They're all severely threatened. Since we can look at DNA molecules, we now actually know that humans and these two species of great apes are more closely related to each other than any of these two great apes are to any other apes. So if there's one thing you take away from today's talk, is that the notion great apes is a biological mistake. It doesn't exist. There is humans and two species of living chimpanzees and the other apes. But it still comes in handy to use the word great apes, quote unquote, because by that we mean all these closely related relatives that do not have language and do not have Sunday assemblies and microphones and satellites. So I'm going to try to argue that humans have invented a novel niche, and that niche is cultural. It's a non-biological inheritance system. It's ideas you can share. And it's very rapidly evolving. It's evolving in biological ways that are more reminiscent of viruses than parent-to-offspring transmission. Of course, parent-to-offspring transmission is still very important. Many of us share some of the beliefs that we were taught by our parents. So I'm going to try to argue that human biology is profoundly embedded by culture and also shaped by culture. Somewhat surprising that some of us who are from Central European ancestry, I'm perfectly fine drinking half a gallon of milk. I don't get sick. Well, that's a mutation that's less than 10,000 years old, and it's almost at 100% in Central Europe. It's also fairly high in Eastern Africa, but it's another mutation there. So twice in the last 10,000 years, humans have been evolving to digest milk, which no other mammal does. An adult mammal doesn't go around stealing milk from another species, but it's part of some of our culture. So to illustrate global human behavior on a global scale, look at this map. These are 1 day worth of flights. That's how we move now. Now imagine a group of 300 unrelated male chimpanzees getting into a Boeing 747 and flying from San Diego to London. It would not be pretty. We know this because in the wild, we have a lot of data on behavior of male chimpanzees. These guys are ridiculously intolerant of other males from other social groups. It looks like there is a limit. Chimpanzees are very good at cooperating. They're very good at being nice to each other. They're not monsters. But for a male chimpanzee, it's virtually impossible to get together with males from another social group and form a higher order system where they might then compete against another social group. So this is a huge difference, a type of social tolerance. I'm not trying to argue that we are so beautifully socially tolerant, but we are much more or much less intolerant than our closest living relatives. So part of the human cultural niche includes technology, things like shelter that humans build. We control fire. I'm ashamed to admit that I have no idea how old the use of fire is. It's almost certainly 1 million years old, but it could have been as old as 2 million. We make tools. We make hunting machines. We have projectile weapons such as bows and arrows. We can make twine and ropes and weave them together. We use containers. We cook, which allows us to eat pretty much everything out there that can be quite poisonous after you boil it. The toxic proteins are now the proteins you eat, such as all the proteins in beans and pulses, for example. We use levers, we use tying materials, and we use arrow poison, which is depicted here. But maybe more importantly, we have these social-cultural niches. We can use symbols that we share. We have personal names, which means you can build a reputation. Chimpanzees and gorillas, they must have something like simultaneous reputation, where one particular individual shows up and everybody in the group, every other individual goes, wow, this is a nasty guy. So that would be an instantaneous reputation, but there is no way to build up a reputation. I know I have a name, I'm Pascal. You have heard my name now. Whatever I do here, hopefully some of it enters your brain. You can share that with hundreds or thousands of other brains. And I am aware of that. And that modifies my behavior, probably more so than I would like to admit. We have kinship terms. If you don't know who your father is, it's very hard to have kinship terms for your paternal side. Humans famously pair bond, sequentially so, but most documented human societies have some degree of pair bonding, which makes it much more likely to know who your dad could be. We have shared rituals, as we just saw, dance and music, powerfully co-opted by religious system to create artificial kinship. We have sacred spaces. We use group identity. We obsess about group identity. Us Swiss Germans make fun about those crazy Germans that are next door because they're so similar to us, we can't stand it. So we have to argue how silly they are. This type of tribalism is everywhere you look. It can be within a country between the long borders and the short borders. We have to make up reasons to despise other groups. And of course, doing so can massively increase the capacity of a group to compete against other groups, and that is pretty much the history of human civilizations. There's a lot, I couldn't, spend all day talking about uniquely human customs. Just take a dictionary and start with the letter A, astronavigation, beekeeping, cycling, x-ray, yoga, or ziplining. There are tens of thousands of things that our species engage in regularly, but no great ape has ever been described doing. It has something to do with the fact that while chimpanzees and bonobos have some type of culture, this culture is very limited. They all do the same thing. They use a big rock to crack nuts or a stick to get at termites or honey, but there is no building upon this. And what is so telling about human culture is that somebody comes up with an idea, everybody copies the idea, and many people modify it, and it's ratcheting culture. That leads to the development of human technology. So we have innovation, we have a balance between innovation and conservation. A good idea shouldn't be taken apart immediately, it should be copied by many minds. And so this leads to this social cognitive process that is mediated by imitation and learning about other ideas. We connect our brains with language and with imitation, and that's what gives us human culture. It's very important to give the great apes their due. They do all kinds of really interesting things cognitively. But one thing they don't do is be aware of their own culture, which some of my colleague primatologists, field primatologists, have called the Jourdain hypothesis, which is a character in Molière who realizes that he's been speaking prose for 40 years and is very grateful to his tutor for that. Chimps are in the category of somebody not realizing that they're speaking prose. I mentioned how aware we are of each other. We should probably be more so, but sometimes we're too much so, and when that happens, we blush, which is a very strange physiological reaction. It's not controllable. It's more visible if you lost some melanin. You only do it in the presence of others, and it still remains completely unexplained. What it is, it's your theory of mind, your awareness of other minds judging you potentially, maybe laughing at you, or thinking your accent is totally ridiculous, and then you start blushing, and you can't control it. So it's poorly understood. I'm happy to report that we do it in the dark, apparently, but you need other people present. So it's our biggest organ, our skin, reacting to a mental construct, namely the awareness of other minds. I wouldn't even know how to test this in a great ape, because I cannot imagine a situation where a chimpanzee would be ashamed. So if you can think of a condition, let me know, and then we'll try to test it. So language is a central thing. It defines our species in many ways. It weaves together populations of minds across generations and allowed for this mesh of reputation that totally changes what we each do. It's also a high fidelity sign of group membership. I can never pass for a Southern Californian. I can be out in the surf and I use one syllable. I say hi, and they go, so where are you from? There is no way on average, past teenage years, the CIA knows this well, if you want to spy, they have to be a teenager in the society that they pretend to be from. I won't talk about fossils a lot. I just want to point out that in Darwin's time, Darwin correctly guessed that our ancestors came from Africa, but they had 0 fossils. Neanderthal was described in his lifetime. They didn't know what it was. We now have a collection of species going back 6 million years with upright ape-like things more than 4.5 million years ago, walking around with a pelvis clearly upright and a skull that has the opening on the other side, underside, not in the back. All these fossils still fit in one pickup truck. So it's much more than what Darwin had, but it's not too much. And I have not drawn any lines here because we don't really know. We know some of them, and that was the vegetarian experiment of the robust Australopithecines. They went extinct after 2 million years. They did quite well, but they were not our ancestors. Somewhere in these taxa is our ancestor. What is very peculiar about our species is that we have a long childhood, we have adolescence, and then we have up to 30% of the living adults that are done reproducing. Sometimes in Western medicine, people talk about menopause as some kind of pathological state, or if you watch the ads on TV for drugs to treat menopause, it's totally wrong. Menopause is an adaptation. There is a lot of evidence indicating that menopause evolved to keep grandmothers around because they are key drivers of that cultural process of enculturation. So our life cycle, our life history is adapted to our cultural transmission. And this growth schedule allows these young minds to pick up the packages, the cultural packages that they need to become functioning member of the society. So we feel very strongly that there is strong evidence showing that the delayed development might be a biological assimilation of culture. I spent several years in West Africa observing wild chimpanzees. They do amazing things. They have culture. They have to learn how to use tools to get at food. But one thing they don't have is language. And they don't teach. They observe. They take years to learn some of these difficult technological feats. But they have no language. They could not tell stories. This is just the data to show you that in human hunter-gatherers, there's a huge fraction of the population, such as this grandmother, who is a Hadza in eastern Tanzania. She's a very tough lady who provides a lot of the food to the young and teaches them how to get at tubers. So in chimpanzees, they pretty much all die by the time they run out of eggs. I will go fast here because I know I'm running out of time. I give you one example of our own work. This is work with colleagues at UCSD, including Ajit Varki. These are molecules on the surface of your immune cells. These molecules are a type of immunological brake. When they interact with cells of the body, they can tell the immune cells to relax. This is important because it keeps friendly fire to a minimum. We came across the fact that one of these immune brakes is polymorphic in humans. And it's an example, we argue, of a biology that reflects the importance of keeping old people around. The dogma in evolutionary biology is that selection completely stops by the time you're done reproducing. In our species, there is evidence that selection has picked up the maintenance of old people, both grandmothers and possibly the few wise grandfathers. We came across a whole collection of genes that are polymorphic in humans with evidence that all of these protect against late onset Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. So uniquely, we compared these to the whole genomes we have for all the great apes. And there is evidence that in our species alone, selection is keeping around old minds and preventing them from getting lost because they contribute to future generations. These are the details. I will just jump over them and get to the summary. So that's the traditional view of the strength of selection, maximum to minimum, over the lifetime. Usually, by the time a species is done reproducing, the individuals die. In our species, there is strong evidence that some genetic systems that protect cognitive capacity are being selected via the survival of the younger generation. So biology is catching up with the importance of transmitting culture. A big question is, how come in humans our brains are 3 times the size of a chimpanzee? What drove this? At what cost? Obstetric complications are absent. Chimpanzee babies are born very easily. They literally pop out. In humans, you often need assistance. There is a huge perinatal mortality because the baby has to navigate the head half a turn and then half a turn back. If you look at the fossil data, there is an exponential increase in brain size that corresponds with innovation. Complex stone tools, small blades, projectile weapons, and so forth. So some cultural and technological innovation seems to correlate with this huge increase in brain size. Until very recently, there were no data on the growth of the brain in a chimpanzee, until a group of chimpanzee researchers in Japan who won the total trust of some captive chimpanzees were able to visualize the growth of the baby's brain during the gestation of this female who's hanging out there being ultrasound. And what they find is that's one way you make a bigger brain. Both the velocity and the total brain volume in a chimpanzee, there is a stop of growth in mid-gestation. Not only do humans power through with a very high growth rate, after birth, human babies continue a fetal birth growth rate of their brain for 1 year. And that's when the baby is being sung to, spoken to, to, held, taken to social activities. So our brains continue developing while we start piling culture into those brains. And guess what? In our species, final brain maturation, as measured by myelinization of neurons, only comes to an end in the 3rd decade. In chimpanzees, by the age of 11 or 12, their brains are fully myelinized. They're pretty much ready to go and start looking for reproductive opportunities. So I'll end with a few words about how you could try to find the genetic pieces that tuned all these things, from growth rate to how you connect your brain. You read in the press and in National Geographic that humans are 98.5% chimpanzee. It's wrong. This was based on old comparisons where half of the genome was thrown out because it was too repetitive and too difficult to study. We now know from complete genome comparisons that the amount, this is a model of the DNA in a cell this big, just to give you an idea how big your DNA is. And the difference between the genome of a human and a chimpanzee is about 5% if you include the pieces that are missing from our DNA but present in the chimpanzees, and the reverse, the pieces that are present in us but absent from the chimpanzees. If we take the chromosomes, which are the chunks of DNA in every cell, and ask where are these differences, they are found across the different chromosomes. They range from losing genes to gaining new genes to making more copies of a gene. So we're at the very beginning of a very exciting research about the genetic basis of humanity. But it is not going to be easy. Why not? We know that in our genomes, about 22,000 proteins are involved in making you who you are. And they're not alone. That's 20,000 naked people that Spencer Tunick convinced to strip on the Gran Plaza in Mexico City. So imagine the interactions of every one of these individuals with their best friends, their family, their distant aunties and grandmothers who try to tell them how to behave. Because that's how you develop. These 22,000 genes are not blueprints. They are simple suggestions and building blocks that all interact to make you, you. They interact with thousands of long non-coding RNA pieces and hundreds of thousands of enhancers, which are pieces somewhere far away on the DNA that influence whether this gene is expressed or not. So to give you a little idea, scientists can now play around with that in a mouse and take one particular gene and show that that same gene, depending on who talks to it, gives you 3 totally different patterns of expression. So I'll end by reminding you that I think there's a good point to be made that we are apes, no question about it, but we are very strange apes, and it's worth thinking about what made us such strange apes. We're culturally biological. I mentioned lactase persistence. This is an example I didn't have time to point out. It turns out that the genetic of humans around the world tell you about the mating systems, whether you're allowed to marry as an uncle and a niece or first cousins. That changes our DNA. So cultural decisions about who marries whom is changing our biology. I'll have to jump here I remind you that life history, the schedule of life, seems to be under selection, even late in life. And unfortunately, a huge limitation for us is that research on chimpanzees, even totally non-invasive research, has become very, very difficult. So we're pretty much running out of data, and there's a lot we still don't know. And I'll leave you with a couple of embarrassingly big open questions. Believe it or not, we have no idea why we are bipedal. We still don't know how old fire is. We don't have good answers why the brain is so big. It probably has to do with culture, but what is driving what, we still don't know. How old is language? How did we manage to become truly symbolic? We are the only species that does that. And why are we pondering the nature of other primates and they don't seem to be pondering our nature? So thank you very much. Questions. There will be a symposium on the implications of human origins for modern medicine this October, and I had the poster up. I'm sorry. Can I quickly put that poster up just to point that out?
Let me move it. Please stand by.
So these are symposia held 3 times a year at UCSD or the Salk Institute. They're totally open to the public. They're from 1 to 5 on Friday afternoons. Here we go. And the next one is on implication of anthropology for medicine and health, where we think loudly. We have people from all over the world that come and talk about the importance of asking human origins questions for everyday life and health problems. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was wonderful, fantastic. So let's all participate in the shared social ritual of singing a song together, led by the inimitable Paul Svensson. Thanks, Paul.
Yes, and I would just like to say that in my inimitable effort to be a smart, wise guy, we're going to sing a song. See, Pascal has credibility because he lived with in Africa with the chimpanzees. I saw the monkeys in 1967. Here we come, walking down the street. Got the funniest looks from everyone we meet. You know it, come on. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. People say we monkey around, but we're too busy singing to put anybody down. Okay, go back. We're going to start from the beginning again. Now you know how it goes. I see some of you laughing, and that's great. Just laugh and sing. That's all I care about. Here we come, walking down the street. That's it. Got the funniest looks from everyone we meet. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. People say we monkey around, but we're too busy singing to put anybody down. Go wherever we want to, do whatever we do. We don't have time to get restless. There's always something new. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. People say we monkey around, and we're too busy singing to put anybody down. We're just trying to be friendly. Come and watch us sing and play. We're the young generation, and we've got something to say. How many of you like that "we're the young generation" thing? Yeah, sing it again. We're the young generation, yeah. We've got something to say. Anytime. Just look over your shoulder. Guess who'll be standing there? Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. People say we monkey around, but we're too busy singing to put anybody down. We're just trying to be friendly. Come and watch us sing and play. We're the young generation, and we've got something to say. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. Come on. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. People say we monkey around. You're all really good sports.
I love that one. Thank you. Forgot to point out that if there's any additional questions for Pascal, he'll be hanging around in the back when we do snacks. Feel free to come back and ask him any questions about his talk or about some of the upcoming events that he pointed out. So, I'd like to bring up a personal moment, something we like to do here.
Not sure what that means. Hi. Well, this story starts out kind of sad, but it picks up. So, anyway, just so you know. All right. So here's my story. My brother had MS, and he was kind of at the end of his rope, at the end of his life, as it turned out. So his wife and their dog, everything, it was just, the place was just they were just a wreck. The anxiety, it was just a horrible scene. But I was traveling back and forth across the country. I was the only one that they felt comfortable having helped them. So I was so anxious about these trips, I started blubbering in an airport one time in what turned out to be a panic attack, but I didn't know. So in order to be welcome in airports, I talked to my doctor, and he prescribed me anti-anxiety medication, which worked very well. It was fine. We got through this whole thing. My brother's life ended. Everybody survived it. So fast forward, I had some great business opportunities and decided to put everything else on hold so I could just concentrate on this work, because I have a little ADD too, and was easily distracted. So putting my social life on hold, I enjoyed my own company. At first I missed my friends, but I was getting a lot done, and didn't really notice things changing. Then something happened that made me think that I might be due for a medication checkup. I was talking to a woman at a crowded business networking event, so we're like close, people all around, and I was looking at her and I was trying to figure out what she was doing. I was like, is she going to sneeze? Is she yawning? And I hadn't even barely gotten to, is she crying, when somebody kind of swooped in and took her, and somebody had stepped on a broken toe. She had a boot on her foot. And I realized I didn't even recognize this woman was standing in front of me crying. So I said, okay, maybe I need to check in here and see if my emotions are a little bit dulled. But I was really envious of those two women sharing this intimacy, and I just realized, I didn't even feel that. I don't feel that anymore. So that was a bit of a wake-up call. The good news is it appears to be reversible, and I'm feeling things again, crying at appropriate times, not just randomly, which is good. But so what was life like without strong emotions? It was weird, and it was kind of like it wasn't worth the trouble to do something. So I was like, should I go out? I was like, I'll just stay home. And then even that got boring. Even that enjoyment became, contentment became just flat. So on the other hand, I did get a lot done, accumulated some savings, and thought, hey, I'll take my daughter and we'll go on a trip. I said, where do you want to go? And I couldn't even think of anything that excited me where I wanted to go. So that was another part of the wake-up call. Referring to our distinguished speaker today, it looks like self-reflexive refers to the observer being part of the behavior. Is that right? So, and without realizing it, I was doing this. I recognized that not experiencing a full range of emotions made life efficient but flat. But it was also without fear of being overwhelmed, so I was able to make an objective decision to live life more fully from the safe vantage point of sleepy synopsis that wasn't afraid of being overwhelmed. So maybe the meds did give me that space, and I needed that much contrast to realize that, hey, let's dive back into the pool of emotions. On the other hand, I did get a lot done. I'm no longer afraid of speaking in public. And yeah, that was my story with medication. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for sharing that with us, Betsy. That was great. It is now time for the MC address, which is where I get to address you and tell you about whatever random thing I'm thinking about. I'm probably not as good at it as Stephen. If you've seen any of his, he's fantastic. But kind of in keeping with our anthropological theme, I actually did study anthropology at UC Davis 10 years ago. And although I didn't make it part of my career, I still find it really fascinating, especially anthropological linguistics and the study of languages, a lot of what we've been talking about. So this picture is, does anybody know where this is? It's definitely Ireland, yes. I know a lot of times you see pictures of Ireland and they're all bright green, and some of it is like that, but not the bog. The bog is this sort of rusty brown color, and that's where I lived, was out in the bog. This particular bog is up in Donegal, up in the north of Ireland. Well, it's way up north, but it's still in the south, if you know what I mean. This is the village of Derrybeg. So it's in County Donegal, and it's up on the north coast. And it is part of the Gaeltacht, which is an area where the primary form of communication on a daily basis would be Irish Gaelic rather than English. And the dialect of Gaelic that I know is a very southern dialect, so it was not always the easiest to get around in this area, but we made it happen. Does anybody know any Gaelic? Any words? Yeah? Awesome. I think it's a really fascinating language because it's so different from English. For example, do you know the words for yes and no? Yeah, that's a trick question. We don't have that. They just didn't, there's no word for yes and no. If somebody tells you that there's a word for yes, they're probably telling you a word like it is, which can work in some situations, but if my question is something like, would you like a cup of tea? And you say, ta, which some people think is the word for yes, you're saying it is. That doesn't make any sense. So in order to say yes, like I would like a cup of tea, you actually have to go ahead and say I would like a cup of tea. You have to repeat the verb. Or if you don't want the cup of tea, nirwa, I would not like, it would not be good with me, literally. So you would think that yes and no would be just this common human thing, like we all need to say yes and no at some point, right? And they have a way of expressing that, but it's a really different way than we have in English. They also don't have other things that we would think is maybe a commonality for a language, like the verb to have. You don't have things. It's not a thing. Of course, they have a way of expressing, like, I have a book, taljauragum. A book is at me. It's at me right now. I can put it down and then it's not at me anymore. It's over there now. So, yeah, it's a completely fascinating language. But going back to the bog, if you know what a bog is, then you do know a word that's derived from Irish Gaelic. It comes from the word bog. It means soft, because they're kind of squishy, like you might sink in if you're walking around in the bog. And that word bog, it can also go into other things that are soft that maybe we wouldn't say in English are soft, like the day, ta bog la'aun, it's a soft day. And literally, there's a soft day in it being the weather. And the day being soft, it's not raining really hard, but it's kind of drizzling maybe, or it's kind of misty. And I like to think of it as if the day had just gotten kind of soft and squishy and water's kind of getting in, but it's not like a heavy rain, it's just kind of a soft day. Yeah, so I just want to finish with, like we've been talking about, like humans have this incredible capacity for reflecting on and explaining the world and ourselves. And I just think that language, the study of language, is a fantastic way of exploring that. So thank you very much. And we're going to have 1 minute of silent reflection.
And welcome back. Thank you, Leah, that was great. So a few announcements. First thing I'd like to point out is none of this is free. It costs a little bit of money to rent the hall and do some of the things we like to do. We don't pass the plate around, we're not going to do that, but I would like to remind you that we do have donation jars available in the back if you'd like to contribute. You can also contribute online. We especially like the recurring online donation, so thanks very much. A couple of announcements of upcoming events. Dan, I think you're first.
I'm hosting the next outdoor scenic walk, the Seven Bridges Walk. We're going to be passing around 7 bridges in and around Balboa Park. It's June 4th at 9 a.m. We'll be meeting in the Rose Garden, which is directly across from the main fountain. Hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
So the place that we've been doing our trivia nights, downtown Johnny Brown's, is closing after many, many years of shuffleboard hosting and delicious food and beer. So we're looking for a new place. If anyone knows a space like that, it was a bar restaurant, so kids could go, and it has to have space on a Saturday night for 30 people or so. So if anyone has anything in mind, come find me afterwards. I'll be in the back, and hopefully we can get it back up and going again on the second Saturday of the month. Also, wanted to point out that we have been looking for a kids program director for a long time, and we finally have someone. Rachel Hamovich, who probably can't hear me because she's outside with the kids right now. What? But she's doing a great job. But she's doing a great job. So if you have kids and you want to drop them off while you come and enjoy Sunday Assembly, we have someone out there now for officially. Yeah, cool. And lastly, we just wanted to thank everybody. We had a crawfish boil 2 weeks ago, and it was a really great time. So thanks to everybody who came, and hopefully we'll make it bigger and better next year.
All right, we are going to be celebrating. We have a summer solstice bonfire, picnic, potluck. Bring some food, bring some friends, bring an instrument if you play one. That's going to be on June 18th, and we're meeting at De Anza Cove around 5 p.m. Yep, that's that. And the next announcement was, I believe, yes, we will be marching in the Pride Parade. That is in July 16th. We'll be meeting to set up at 9 a.m. And starting to march at around 10. We will have some crafting sessions for float decorations, so be looking for that on Meetup. It'll be really fun.
All right, and lastly, just a reminder, you can find us online at sundayassemblysandiego.org. You can find us on Meetup, and also our Facebook forum, where everybody's open to post all the things that are happening in their lives. So let's round it out with another song from Paul Svensson. This is a sing-along for everybody.
Yes, it is. All right. Everybody up, unless you don't want to, then you don't have to. So, the delicious irony of doing a song for this group called Don't Stop Believin', right? This is called Do a Rock Anthem on an Acoustic Guitar. Ready? Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere. Just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. He took the midnight train going anywhere. Singer in a smoky room, smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard. Shadows searching in the night. Street light people, just to find emotion hiding somewhere in the night. Working hard to get my fill. Everybody wants a thrill. Paying anything to roll the dice just one more time. Some will win and some will lose. Some were born to sing the blues. Oh, the movie, it never ends. It goes on and on and on and on. And strangers waiting up ocean hiding somewhere in the night. Oh, don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street lights, people, oh, don't stop believing. Hold on to the feeling. Street lights, people, oh, don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street lights, people, oh, one more time now, sing about it. Stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street lights, people, oh.
All right, thank you so much. Fantastic song. I love that midnight train going anywhere. Have you ever gotten to a train station with a set amount of cash but no destination in mind, and you're just like, how far can I go? It's a fantastic feeling, going anywhere, yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming to Sunday Assembly. We have coffee, tea, and snacks in the back, and you're welcome to join us at Pizzicato for lunch afterwards. Thank you.